And Donna is joined by our presenters, President of Maritz Global Events, David Peckinpah, Joe D'Alessandro, President and CEO of the San Francisco Travel Association,
Right.
and founder and events consultant of Gallus Events, William Thompson.
Normally when a speaker comes onto stage, they'll say, "Can you hear me in the back?" But owing to my accent, I have to ask you, can you understand me in the back? Okay, great. I'm here today to speak about how one small country, Scotland, is looking to solve homelessness and how one profession, event organisers, are playing their part. So this is me hanging over a first level balcony. I don't think health and safety had been invented in 1976. And it's quite clear that no one had done a risk assessment. I was actually trying to find out the actual seated capacity of the venue. I think I was an event organiser from a very early age. Now, unfortunately, Glasgow has a particular struggle for a post-industrial city, moving away from traditional heavy industry, similar to the situation in Pittsburgh and many American cities. But in Glasgow, one particular problem was the amount of slum housing. So even in the 1980s, there was hundreds of thousands of Glaswegians who were still living in property close to being unfit for human occupation. Now, even though there was a city-wide level of deprivation, there was very few homeless, and there was certainly no one sleeping rough. In Scotland, the City Council has a legal duty and obligation to house every single citizen. Now, this is part of the safety net that was built up after the Second World War, but unfortunately, more people are now slipping through that gap. Now, the seeds of the crisis that I'm going to talk about today really dates back to 1979 with the election of Margaret Thatcher. Now, I'm not sure if that name's particularly well known or if she's held in particularly high regard. But what she decided to do was allow people to buy and then sell their council homes. And that dramatically depleted the housing stock. And if you remove houses, if you remove the supply and you increase the demand, homelessness becomes a mathematical certainty. And that's what's happened. And that's happened in the UK, and that's happened in the US and across the Western world. Now, Margaret Thatcher's policies in the 80s and 90s continued to split communities and societies across Scotland. And her policies were never popular. She never received more than 25% of the vote in Scotland. However, across the UK, her policies started to remove money from the poorer in society to the wealthier in society. And nowhere was that more obvious than the provision of a home. Now, I was lucky. I was one of the tens of thousands of Glaswegians who rented a secured tenancy or who lived in a property in a secure tenancy from Europe's largest landlord, which was Glasgow City Council. But there's many who are not as fortunate. Now, what Scotland's doing to solve the homelessness crisis is to take the same approach that society took to knife crime. And that was to take a public health approach to these issues rather than a public safety approach. Now, those things might sound quite similar, but they're very, very different. And I would encourage you to look at homelessness as a public health issue rather than a public safety issue. And I think if you lobby your representatives to do the same thing, then we're starting to move towards how we can make this a success. So that's what Scotland's doing, and that's what our society is doing. So what are event organisers doing? Because we can play an incredible part. So this is an image from Sleep in the Park, which was an event held in Edinburgh in a cold and crisp December evening in 2017. Almost 8,000 people slept outside overnight to raise money. And it's easy when you have a backdrop like that. That's Edinburgh Castle. Now, there was £4 million raised from people volunteering, £4 million, and that was doubled by the Scottish Government. And then a couple of months later, they added another £2 million. So that was £10 million raised from one event and from one event organiser. Now, that money has been given to something called the Scottish Housing First Fund. And they've been given this money, and they're looking for people who are going to come to them and say, we will build homes for the most unfortunate in our society, and we will provide wraparound care. And this is what Homeless First means. It means taking a public health approach and realising that the only true way to solve homelessness and rough sleeping is to give people a home. And I think it's interesting, we talk about homelessness and not houselessness. And I think that points towards the types of solutions we should be looking to find. We should be trying to find people a home and not just shelter. Do you agree? Mm-hmm. Just a couple of months before the event run by Social Bite in Edinburgh, I saw this headline in a Scottish newspaper. Now, I live in Barcelona, so I was 1,000 miles away at the time, and I couldn't believe that this was true. And I contacted someone to say, is this actually true, that the city I was born in, where everyone had a home, this is happening, and unfortunately it is. So I was stirred into action, and I thought, what can I do to help the homelessness situation in Glasgow? And I've only really got the skill to do one thing, and that's to organise events. So that's what I decided to do. I looked at what was on offer, and a lot of organisations were running seminars and conferences and workshops. So I thought I had to do something different, and I had to do something practical. And for me, the event that delivers practical solutions is a hackathon. Now, I'd never run a hackathon before. I don't know about you, but I had to go on and think, what's the actual definition of a hackathon? Because I want to run one, because I know they deliver practical solutions. So I threw myself in because I knew this event would deliver success. And it did. I'm pleased to say 6 months later, we ran Scotland's first dedicated event to help homelessness. It was in Glasgow. And there was just a small group of people who came together to find solutions. We ended up working on 7 projects in total over the weekend. And the 3 winning ones were. The first one was a platform that allowed organisations to donate excess food. And having attended a couple of functions last night, think how much excess food there is from our event over these few days. The second one was a communications app that would allow the street teams who help homeless to be alerted when someone was homeless. And it would also allow them to communicate better to help them provide the services. And then the third one was a signposting app called Harbour. And I think we're very fortunate as event organisers that we've learned so many skills over the years. And certainly I feel for me that I have to put back. And when I look at our communities, I think when we run events, it's really the best of what a community can do. And when we bring people together to a good event, that's great. But I think our events can do good. And when I look at a room full of American event organisers, and I think, what can you do? My heart just swells, because I think you can start to end homelessness. Because if you add the skills and the determination that event organisers have and put it towards any problem, I think solving it becomes a mathematical certainty. And that's what I would hope to push you towards to do, is to look at a problem and think, we can solve this if we all work together.
Yes, this is lighting up with all kinds of questions, and I also... William, thank you. That was amazing. Close.
Just want to say that it's really important to get to understand the situation. It's very easy to look at people on the streets and think that they're criminals and all these bad things. Most of the time, people who are homeless are not committing crimes on the streets. So don't lump them together and just get involved. Involvement is at the local level. These problems are only going to be solved if they're solved at the local level. Be brave, take some risky steps. Talk to your elected officials, make sure things are being done, and make sure that they're just not trying to push the problem away, but trying to solve the problem. That's really the key.